died instantly. They were set. This table was below a thing that had steel beams running this way, loose steel beams, and then planks. It's where they removed them to load the chip. From the jar of the impact of the explosion, that flipped in the air, and they all came down and crushed everybody. My best buddy had his eyeballs blowing right out of his head. I wished he wouldn't have. The lieutenant shined the flashlight down in there, and I saw him. But I was knocked out, ended up down in a pile of mules, and I don't know how long I was out. I never did find out. I would guess about 12, 15 minutes. When I came to, I was under this pile of mules, and they were peeing all over me. They'd stepped all over me. I had over 500 hoof prints on my body. They were sipping on me. They peeled off my eyebrows with my ears. Their hoofs would stand on me and then slip off. We were just a mess. But the adrenaline is pumping. You don't even feel it. I finally got up out of there. The ship had split in half. And a buddy of mine was hollering, "Help, help." So I could hear his voice, and I kept reaching for him in the dark. I finally got him, brought him over to the ladder. I found the ladder, and you know, the little rascal went up the ladder and never looked back to see if I made it. He was so anxious to get out of there. And he made it. And I got up, the lieutenant said, because my left leg was not functioning very good, he said, "You could never make it." The ship had split in half and it had spread and dropped. But you know, I made it. I made it on my belly and then swung over. And less than 10 seconds after I made it, the front half went down. And we had a total of 91 survivors out of 126 men total, including Merchant Marine, Air Force. We had some Air Force. So we had 91 survivors out of the bunch. So you see, we lost quite a few. So then we got into the raft. And the mules, half of them got blown overboard. They tried to climb on top of the raft, and they would tip it over. We'd get back on it again, and then they broke off our ration container. So we ended up with water, but no rations for 20 days. One swallow of water a day for each one of us. And of course, that didn't go over very good with some of the people on the raft. One in particular, he thought that he deserved more water than the rest of us. Everybody that took that one swallow, he'd say, "Can you save just a couple drops for me? I'm bigger than you guys." Lieutenant said, "Ernest, we live together or we die together. Nobody gets any more water than anybody." And we thought for a while that we were going to have to throw him overboard. But he did settle down. But the submarine surfaced in the dark. It was almost solid overcast, but not quite. The moon was shining. Thank goodness that it was that overcast that bad. We could see the silhouette of the sub, and it surfaced right beside the raft. I put my foot against it to push the raft away so it wouldn't bang against it. And we could hear him come out. You could hear him cock the machine guns, and I expected any minute to be blowing to bits. But he shined the light like this back and forth over the top of us. He didn't see us sitting right beside him. They went 100 feet. They stopped. He shined the light again, this time just under us. They didn't see us. They didn't see us. So they disappeared. So our nightmare began. And everybody was hungry. Oh, everybody was hungry for 4 days. They wanted this, they wanted this, oh, for this or that. After 4 days, nobody was hungry anymore, because your system starts feeding off from itself after 4 days. A lot of people don't know that, but it does. their system will start feeding off from itself. So, as time went on, I told the last group about one morning, and the waves were just ocean swells. The swells had waves on them, and we would be as high as 100 feet in the air on this well. And then you'd feel yourself gliding down the side of it, and you would look, and I just got the tar scared out of me. I looked here, I could see 100 feet down into the water, and the raft was sliding down this, and I got about halfway down, and the water came up from the bottom, and you're up on another peak. It's hilarious. It's the best roller coaster in the world. And if you've never experienced, I hope you never have to. But we took turns standing guard, sort of, like I told the last class. We had a pole in the corner of the raft, and each one of us would take turns because we needed to straighten our legs out, for one thing. And we did, the lieutenant did make us swim for the first 5 days. And I dove off one time to swim, and as I came back to the raft, I spotted 5 barracuda under the raft. So I got to the raft just as quick as I could, and he didn't allow anybody to go overboard after that. But we had 18 men on an 8-man raft. And if you didn't know what sardines were, you found out what that is. We were so crowded you didn't even have time to breathe decent. 18 people on a size 6 by 8. Try putting 18 people in there. See how successful you'll be. It was terrible. On the morning of the 20th day, one of the fellows refused to stand up and watch. So I told the lieutenant, I said, I'll stand up again. He said, well, you just finished your watch. I said, I'll stand up again. So I did. In less than 3 minutes, I looked, and here come a ship right down dead for us. The USS Corpus Christi, Coast Guard cutter. And I said, Lieutenant, here comes the ship. And he says, not you too. Everybody was having hallucinations. Everybody was seeing ships that weren't there. I said, well, Lieutenant, if this one is a mirage, he's flashing, stand by. And of course, when I said that, they knew it was for real, and everybody spun around and looked at this ship coming right dead down on us. He circled us. They picked up the sub. The sub was still there. They dropped off 81 depth charges in circles. They kept circling, but they didn't get them. They eluded them, and I didn't get a chance to tell the last class. It wasn't until 6 weeks later, our own submarine, called the Rock, went out and stayed at periscope depth for over a week, and they finally surfaced, and they got him with a torpedo. So that was the good part of it. The rest of it was, we were aboard this ship, and he stayed out there hunting some more survivors, and he found us, took us to Perth, Australia. The hospital couldn't take us. A doctor and a nurse came out and said, well, it doesn't look like anything is life-threatening, so we can't take you in the hospital because it's full. So they took us 13 miles south to Fremantle. It was a Coast Guard base. There was an empty barracks, and they put us all in that one barracks, and then they had to carry us to the chow line. And I became somewhat of their nursemaid or doctor. When our toenails started to grow back in, I would take a fingernail file and a little dab of cotton, and I'd pry up the edges of the toenails when they started to grow back in, and put a little bit of cotton underneath it so they wouldn't ingrow. Our feet were just like footballs. And when I tell the story, I say to the ladies, and you think you know what dishpan hands are. You don't. You spend 20 days in salt water, and you'll find out what they're like. Can you imagine what that does to your feet, which is not used to that duration in water? So he had to be carried to the chow line, and these Coast Guard boys would come over. Most of the guys, they made a chair, and carried. But this one guy spotted me, and he says, I'll take this little guy all by myself. I weighed 90 pounds when I got picked up. Went from 156 down to 90 pounds without food. So he picked me up and carried me. And finally we got so we could walk, recuperated, and we left. We went back up through Hollandia, Bayak, and Morotai and cleaned out the Japs, and then on up to the Philippines. And right here in Sierra Vista, this is the part that bothers me and makes me weep. About 12 years ago, right here at this McDonald's, I was stopped to bring my wife a cup of coffee. And I opened the door to go in, and there was a fellow there in a wheelchair and his wife pushing it. And he hollered at his wife. He says, wait a minute. So I stopped, and he looked at me and he said, I know you. I said, I'm sorry, I don't know you. And he said, you got torpedoed off the coast of Australia. Yeah? You had to be carried in the chow line now. He said, I'm the guy that carried you. Can you believe that? How many years? I got to stop and think about that. This 12 years ago, they would make it, goodness sakes, 50 years. And here he was in a wheelchair. And he remembered me. And I said to my wife, we got to keep coming back over here, because I want to not only thank him, but visit him. Because in the shape I was in when he was carrying me, the farthest thing from my mind was getting acquainted. My idea then was getting better, being able to walk. And he saw to that. But we never saw him again. So I told my wife something's happened to him. So we started watching the obituary columns. And yes, there he was. About a month later, there was his picture. And I have his obituary picture as well. Yes. If you ever want to look it up you can look it up on your computer. Ships Lost at Sea, World War II. The SS Peter Silvester. And it'll show you pictures of people being picked up. And when we first saw that, my wife says, can you pick out your own picture? I said, when they got picked, them are the guys that got picked up at 7 days and 9 days. They had given up on us by the time we got picked up. There were no cameras. There was nobody taking any pictures when we got picked up. And we got picked up by the USS Corpus Christi, and he had disregarded Admiral Nimitz' orders not to go out anymore. He said, it's too late, they're gone. He said, Admiral, I'm going. And he went out and found us, took us to Perth. And he said to the Admiral, I'm going out again. The Admiral said, you can be court-martialed for disobeying my orders. He said, okay, go ahead. He went out again, and he found these other people that were out 32 days. So such is the stories of war. Now, some people had it worse. Some people went down with the ship, all of them, all hands. My next door neighbor went in, he enlisted at 17. He got caught in a whirlpool. I had never heard of that, in the middle of the Pacific. And they were in a convoy, and he was on a cruiser. And it's just like a whirlpool caught him, and the whole ship started this, and the whole ship went to the bottom. See, some people had it worse than I did, but this was just my story. And it's going to be that way with you people in life too. You're all going to have different things happen to you. How you survive is going to depend on you. How you make your way in life is going to depend on you. Those rules you got up there on the board, They describe every one of you. Read them and heed them. Because the habits you pick up today are going to be your character for life. Right there. That's it. You cannot avoid it. You can say, oh, not me, all you want to. But that's you. Right there. The habits that you develop today are going to be your character tomorrow. And today's age, what the world is, all these shootings, you know something? You people can be an inspiration to the world simply by being kinder to those younger than you. Love them. And the best way, there's a secret way to detune or disarm your enemy. You'll never guess what it is. Agree with them. If somebody says to you, you know, you are a piece of, you aren't worth it, say, you know something? You're probably right. They got nothing more to say. You see, you've neutralized them. And then you can say, oh, come on, let's be friends. I remember when I was in 8th grade, we had a fellow come, that was their only year in school. And I was always small, he was much bigger. And at recess he says, I'm going to beat you right into the ground. So I just stood out there like that looking at him. He walked right up to me. Right up to me, and he was a head taller than me. And he saw that I wasn't going to move. He walked right up to me and he just stood there and he said, you know, I don't see why we can't be friends. And we were. But you see, violence, there are times when, yes, I can kill a man with one blow. I was taught that in the service. One blow. And I could kill anybody, no matter how big. But I will not tell you how to do it. Because some of you might lose your temper and use it. You'd be sorry afterwards. A man, a Marine, right in St. Paul, Minnesota, killed a man after he got out of the service. And the judge was going to sentence him to life. He said, do you have anything to say before I sentence you? He said, yeah. He said, I had a dog with me in the service. And he says, when they discharged the dog, they detuned him for 6 weeks. They turned me loose, handed me a discharge, shook my hand and said, good luck. They didn't detune me. Now you think about it. The man was 18 years old when he went in the service. He spent 21 years in the service, trained to kill. That was his life. Nobody bothered to detune him. See, when I almost killed a man. I had a service station, and I always got the men together, and I told them how I was trained. I said, I'm little, but I'm quicker than chain lightning. Don't sneak up behind me. Don't ever sneak up behind me. And it's good advice for anybody. Don't ever sneak up behind anybody. He did. He got to talking. He says, that little guy, he said, you watch, I'm going to sneak up behind him and all show. He did. I was out shoveling snow. He snuck up behind me, from behind, grabbed me, and guess what? In less than 10 seconds, he had a broken jaw, a broken arm, and 3 broken ribs. And I was just going to throw that death blow, and I pulled myself back from it. I caught it. But that's what happens when you're taught to kill and you can lose your temper. This is what's happening in the world today. These shootings. What's happened? Somebody loses their temper. See, the Bible says, become angry, but don't sin. It means you can be angry with somebody, disagree with them, but don't lose your temper. Because once you lose your temper, you're out of control. I was battalion boxing champion in the service. I've never been knocked down. I won every fight I ever fought. The sergeant wanted me to get into the pro circuit when I got back to the States. But I became a minister and the Lord took me away from that. You see, you can tune yourself, whether you be men or women. And some of the biggest fights I've ever seen are between girls, because they lost their temper, and after it was all over, they say, what were we fighting about anyway? A German guy, there's over 500 Germans right here in Silvester. And I've been an appliance man. I'm Clay from Clay's Appliance Repair. You maybe have been in some of your homes, I don't know. But a lot of people know me. And I fixed something for him that he couldn't fix. And he says, you know, Clay, he says, if you'd have been in Germany, we'd have won the war. I said, Gunther, nobody wins a war. All you win is a lot of heartache and sorrow and expense. But one thing more about people your age. I had a sister your age. Along come the pastor's son and another boy. They were bound determined that they were going to take my sister on a blind date. And she wanted to go. My father was a pretty good character reader. He said, no, Wanda, you're not going with him. She went back into the bedroom and she threw the world's best temper tantrum. You don't love me, you blah, blah, blah. And she was up throwing it like a 2-year-old baby. The very next day, the police came through and they said, did that young guy or that pastor's boy, did you see him here yesterday? Yeah, my father said, yeah. He said, well, he says, we got to get him. Was he on a motorcycle? Yeah. Well, he murdered the guy that had that motorcycle. And my sister heard that. She came out and she said to Dad, I'm so sorry. Dad said, yes, you're sorry now. But will you be tomorrow? If somebody comes along and you get a rough idea, be careful the mate you choose. Don't just choose somebody because they say nice things, they're nice looking. Learn to know people before you mate up with them. And use caution in life. Don't lose your temper. But like I tell, you could be an inspiration to the world. You people right here, you're right on the threshold of life. Be kind to your fellow men. Be kind to those younger than you. Take care of them. And I'm going to say God bless you. I don't know how many of you are churchgoers, but I know that all of you should be.
Thank you. Mr. Fultz, before we go, can you talk a little bit about your enlistment and your branch of service and how old you are when you enlisted?
I was 18 when I went in the service. I was drafted. Oh, there's a thing before that. See, my father was a cruel man. But my mother would always say, your father is cruel, but none of you have ever been in jail either. But now listen, my father did leave me with 2 things that I've always remembered. He said, once a job has once begun, never leave it till it's done. If the task be great or small, do it well or not at all. The second thing he said was, a wise old owl sat in an oak. The more he heard, the less he spoke. The less he spoke, the more he heard. Why don't you be like that old bird? You think about that. The more you listen, the more you learn. Never criticize an adult. As a matter of fact, I tell the women of today, if you want to learn something, look up one of these old gray-haired ladies and ask them. And people who want to criticize blacks, I say, let me tell you something. Down through the ages, slavery was a terrible thing. But I say, let me tell you something. There's lots of those old black mammies that nursed lots of white babies to life. And they don't know it. So, human life is to be respected. But my father did cuss me out and I could do nothing right, and yet I was the only workhorse on the farm. He said, what you need is a good stretch in the service to make a man out of you. So the next day I went and enlisted in the Navy. Brought the papers home, gave them to him. I was only 17, so he had to sign them. He wouldn't sign them. He said, let's think about this. You see, he was changing his tune. I said, okay, Dad, you put those papers aside, and anytime instead of you talking to me from now on, just take the papers and sign them and give them to me. So, but prior to that, I was a farm boy. We went in the service. We had to break 345 horses in 6 weeks in Fort Riley, Kansas. My butt was sore, my arms were sore, everything was sore. Yes, I've had a rough life, and I've been a professional mechanic all my life. I've been in Plays Appliance Repair here for last 21 years in Silvester. Is there any other things? Anybody got questions?
Thank you.
Yes.
How do you have any kids now?
I can't hear.
Do you have any kids now?
Do you have any kids?
Pardon?
Do you have any children?
Oh, yes. I have 3 daughters. 2 are in the Wisconsin Dells, and 1 is in Brooksville, Florida. The one in Brooksville, Florida, the youngest one, put in 26 years as assistant manager in the high school in Brooksville, Florida. The other 2 were head chefs in a cafe till they sold it, and now the oldest daughter manages a grocery store, and the middle daughter, she loves cleaning. She's a cleaning buff. She goes to work in motels wherever, and they've got 2, 3, 4 of them now, and she's in charge of all of that. I said to her that not much future in that. She says, I know, but I just love to clean. And she had 4 children, a girl and 3 boys, sadly, and I know she's going to cry. The oldest daughter died at 58 years old, overdose of drugs. The second boy died the 1st of January this year, overdose of drugs, they think. He was 58. They found him dead in his home in Avery, Wisconsin. They don't know. He had an accident, drunk or went to sleep, rolled his car 5 times, went AWOL from the Army, a regular rogue. But now listen to this, this is going to kick you. Her husband ran off with my wife. They were party people. They loved to drink and cruise. When they died, when my ex-wife died, she left me $12,000 in debt to the IRS. I went down to the bank. The bank said, we know all about it. You don't pay anything till you get on your feet. A year from that date, I went back and paid him off. He died. He shot and killed himself. Her husband shot and killed himself December the 4th, 1974. They're both gone. Both of us are here. Both of us don't drink. We don't smoke. I'm a minister now, and she's right by my side. This woman is the closest thing you could ever find to a perfect wife. If I think about something I would like to have her do during